hypervolting and all these great percussion tools and all those things, they're awesome.
Yeah.
But just aids, right? And all those things you want to do consistently.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to get them to understand that even if you're doing those things, you still want to be doing those other things as well, right? It would be like taking a multiple vitamin, but your diet's completely out the window.
Well, that's the thing, right, Vinny? It's like, it's just and I think this is maybe more prevalent when we look at our younger athletes, right? You can only get, in my opinion, right? And maybe you, and I'm assuming you might agree, but again, I said in a suit, right? I think you can only get by on skill for so long. And then at some point, this is going to happen, right? You can have all the skill in the world, but if you're shoving McDonald's in your face and constantly getting inflammation in your body, your ability to recover goes down, right? And if we can preach these simple hacks at a young age, right? And it's stuff that I wasn't aware of when I was younger, right? I mean, for me, I had the attitude when I was younger, like more is better and harder is better. Where they're sleeping, I'm going to train because I'm out working, right? And I think that attitude maybe only goes so far. But back then it was, it was train to recover, when I love the attitude, let's recover to train, right? Sometimes, we know now by research and science that we know that sometimes harder is not better. Sometimes the best workout is the one that didn't happen, right? And I love where you're going with this. And what I really love that you just mentioned was talking about foam rolling and controlled breathing, right? You talked about slow and deliberate, right? We see people that are foam rolling really quickly, have their hypervolt or their hypersphere on a high vibration. And what they don't realize, or maybe they're just not aware of, is that you're now getting your body in a sympathetic state, right? But if you can have controlled breathing, and I read something lately, some research that I think there's a lot more research that I need to do around it, but this whole concept of nasal breathing, right? Belly breathing that yoga's been doing for years. And what that does is it taps into the lower lung where there's parasympathetic nerve receptors, right? And now there's a lot of athletes that are looking at actually training with their mouth closed, like taking medical tape and actually closing their mouth and forcing themselves to nasal breathe in a sympathetic state. So you got this constant battle between parasympathetic and sympathetic, which I think is really, really interesting. So breathing is something that I need to do a lot more research on, but I think it's incredibly powerful. And I love that you're talking about that and having your athletes do that.
And it's honestly kind of tough because when I first started, when this whole breathing thing was becoming very prominent, and you were seeing all of these, we can name many names who really just specialize in that.
Oh, yeah.
To the forefront. The biggest thing is, how the heck do I get my athletes to buy into it? How the heck do I implement breathing? And then listen, there's days I'll be quite out, like we're not doing some of the groups. I'm getting into 90-90 box breathing, right? Because you say, what's priority? How many days a week do I see them? How long do I have? So if I can more install that with homework and give them as homework, it's even better.
Yeah.
But now with the older athletes, a little bit different because and a little bit more, you can get them to buy in a little bit better. But I met some coaches at the professional level who their athletes do not leave the room. Like the second they're done with their last set and last rep, they're at the wall 90-90 box breathing. I try my best not to let these guys leave in a stressed out state.
Love it.
And I really do. And especially when you're talking about people that have to go to work for their day or CEOs running businesses, is that you don't want them leaving in that, breathing really heavy and catching their breath. You want them leaving calm, right? Driving home parasympathetic in a better environment to recover. But yes, I think more and more, I'm really trying to, when they foam roll, when they're stretching, it's like, I don't know who said it, but if you're just stretching, but you're not breathing, you're just doing busy work, right?
Yeah.
You're focusing on actually breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth, or whether it's nasal only breathing, you're only getting like 40 or 50% out of it. Maybe not even, right? I don't know the exact number on it, but and I've seen that myself. So personally, I've taken over the quarantine. I said, okay, there's got to be a couple of things that I start doing now daily to add into my life. And one of those things was breathing every morning for 2 to 5. And honestly, I probably went on it had to be almost a 2-month stretch where I don't think I maybe missed a day.
Wow.
We missed a day on doing some sort of controlled breathing, whether I was doing a 5-5-5, a 3-5, whatever the tempo was. But I can tell you it 100% helped with anxiety. It helped calm.
Wow.
I mean, there was a lot of things. I mean, a few things that I can tell you that no doubt I was better because of it. So,
oh wow, that's amazing to hear. And I think on that topic of trying things ourselves, right? This whole concept of I would never ask you to do something that I've never done myself. I think one thing that I certainly see in our industry as a lot of gadgets come on the market and all these tools and things that we have access to, that I think it's really important that we learn before we teach, not teach before we learn, right? So I love the fact that you've talked about, hey guys, I actually went on this 2 months, the 2 month stint that I focused on breathing for myself. And this is what it did for me. And being able to speak from that, from an authentic point of view, I think just shows how not only serious you take your role, but how vested you are in making sure that your athletes have access to information so they can make better informed decisions, right? If they see you doing it, kids are like sponges, right? If they see us doing it, right, their likelihood to repeat and look into it and do it themselves goes up, you know?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, so you talked about some things that are, you know, and I love your approach of, okay, let's, you know, instead of telling them what they should do, you ask them what resources do you have accessible to you? And you start by asking a question. That way you'll get more buy-in, right? Do you have access to a bathtub? Well, you know that they do, right? And then saying, here's these recovery hacks that you can use. And we know the power of cold showers and cold plunging for reducing inflammation and speeding up recovery. Cold showers in the morning. I'm having cold showers in the morning to reset my nervous system, right? I'm trying to drink one less pot of coffee in the morning and maybe have one coffee and a cold shower. And that seems to set me up for the day, right? Because we know there's lots of research behind that. In terms of sleep, so you mentioned kind of sleep with your athletes. Is there any particular recommendations that you are giving your athletes as it relates to kind of sleep habits and patterns?
Yeah, you know, I keep it a really, really basic, right? I want to understand. So it's number one is, what are you currently getting now? In and honest, what do you think you currently, how many hours every night are you getting? So if somebody's really, if they're all over the map, right, I'm going to try to get them a number to say, let's shoot for this. If they're getting 5, what can we do to 7? But I'm trying to uncover why they're not sleeping.
Yeah.
Why aren't you sleeping?
Yeah.
So whether it's blue light, right? I'm watching TV. I'm on my iPhone. That's a big problem right now. The phones, right? It's really just, that is the biggest issue, right? Could be staying on the phone all night with their friends. Something before bed that's kind of jacking them up, that's more demanding. It's getting them excited where they should be setting up their environment for sleep, right? So I think it's really kind of uncovering why they're not sleeping.
Yeah.
And then getting them to understand the importance of sleep. That is something that we're going to do pretty much every day of our life. We're going to sleep. That is powerful too. I mean, you could do all these other things, but if your sleep's not on point, those other things are not going to be as powerful, right?
Yeah.
So I keep it basic. Let's shoot for 7 to 9 hours from what we're going, right? Some may need more, some less, but let's try to shoot for 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep. You know, sometimes having a snack before bed, maybe a little bit of a carbohydrate, not too much, but just a little bit, can sometimes help sleep, right? Making sure they're doing things such as turning their phones off. You know, if they're magnesium supplementation, or if they're not the magnesium, snack on some walnuts, foods that contain magnesium, things that can help draw home sleep. But keep it very basic for them. It's just try to get your 7 to 9 hours. What we can do before that to set you up in a good sleep environment, right? Black out your room, right? Don't have any sound in your room. How can your mind to stop racing, right? Some controlled breathing and foam rolling, hot shower, things of that nature. And once they can start doing that and they can start getting some quality sleep, I mean, it's funny because you instantly start to notice the difference in their performance by talking to them cognitive wise, right?
Yeah, 100%.
They can't even function properly. I'm like, well, how much sleep did you get last night? 4, coach.
Yeah.
That's why you're not sharp. You're forgetting everything and you're not focused.
Right. So let's, you know, and here's some of the stuff that we know as it relates to, you know, performance and sleep, right? So we know that you know, I think it was the Stanford Sleep Clinic that did some research with the men's basketball team, right? Where they basically did an 8-week study. For the first 4 weeks, they deprived them of sleep. So they had anywhere from 5 to 6 hours of sleep. The back 4 weeks, they made sure they got 8 to 10 hours of sleep, right? And at the end of that 8 weeks, there was a 9% increase in accuracy in free throws, right? And their sprint speed went up by 1 second simply by adding sleep, right? And then you come in and sleep in cognitive abilities. So say as a coach, you got a whole bunch of skill acquisition that we need to do today, and your athletes are sleep deprived. What's their ability to learn that new skill, or B, do it with efficiency, right? Because if you ask an athlete to do something and they can't perform it, right? What does that do for adherence? What does that do for self-efficacy, especially with young athletes, right? So performance is, 100%, and, cognitive function, and we know health and inflammation and all that type of stuff. I mean, we could dive into sleep all day, but I love what you're doing. What can you do? Vinny, some of the big things over the research that I was exposed to the last 5 years is I had to make some big changes to my sleep habits. And right, the 3 things that I did that worked for me, right, is number 1, consistent bedtime, consistent wake time within 30 minutes, right? And then from there is this used to be my alarm clock by my bed, right? No reason to have this by your bed. It can still be your alarm clock, but put it down the hallway, right? So it got rid of blue light, right? And then making sure what you talked about is getting your mind clear is just doing a gratitude journal at night, right? And dumping that stuff out of your head. And, what are some things that don't cost a lot of money that we can get our athletes to small steps to start and adhere to? I love the fact that, let's start simple. And then if that works, what else can we introduce?
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned the gratitude, right? Because that was one of the other, I got the 5-minute gratitude journal. And
love it.
And I also actually, I have I bought these as a set here, right here, the gratitude journal. And then
I love it.
The planner. So what I did was that, there's got to be something about the gratitude, right? And having a step, a ritual every morning, right? Because so I'm a big podcast listener, and started again over the quarantine. I said there's some things that I really want to make sure that I want to improve, and there's some things that I definitely need to start doing more of and get back to doing. And one of those things was reading. Yeah. So there was probably 3 to 4 very powerful things that I got back into my life or started for the first time that have made a profound impact. And one of it is gratitude. And you're starting to see all of these people that you read about, or different successors in whatever industries, that gratitude, it seemed to be a common theme across the board, So I said, you know what? I'm going to get a gratitude journal, and I do it every morning and every night.
Love it.
Committed to 365 days, every morning and every night. I try my best. Do I miss a day here and there? Yes, I do. Right. Nothing's perfect, but I made a conscious effort that if I have a 5-step routine, if I can check off 2 of those things, I'm already winning. Right.
Absolutely.
How you set the tone in the morning. I see that now. Win your morning, win your day. Right. So gratitude, starting off with that 5 minutes of gratitude. And what am I grateful for right now?
Yeah.
Right. And then ending the day with more gratitude. What are some things that happened that were amazing today? What things can I improve on? And it's that simple. Right. And sometimes you don't even realize, like, you're writing it down, and you might not be completely, but you just have to keep doing it. Right. Yeah. Some days you're a lot more into it, what you're writing. And some days, just depending on if you have a cluttered brain, you might not be, but the power is still doing it and staying disciplined. But gratitude journaling, huge, and some sort of movement.
Yeah.
Right? Well, so it was something that I have on my board here. That's mindfulness, movement, and mindset.
Love it.
And on that mindfulness, movement, and mindset, it was doing something to move, getting the blood flowing, right? Being mindfulness of some sort.
Yeah.
And then your mindset, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you're going down those 3 things. And even if you're doing 2 to 5 minutes of each thing, it's better than nothing. Absolutely. So I think the gratituding and doing some sort of movement, mobility in the morning, it already starts to set up for the rest of your day.
You know what, Vinny, that is music to my ears, right? And just for those
I'm having a tough time hearing you.
All right, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me okay, brother? Hey, Vinny.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I just can't hear you.
Okay. Hey, Jesse, I know you're kind of back in the scene. You're kind of managing this. Can you hear me okay?
I can't hear you still.
Okay.
Yep, you're good on my end.
Okay.
So why don't you keep going, Dan, and we'll get Vinny back in here in a second.
Okay. All right. So while we get Vinny back in, what Vinny's talking about is kind of, music to my ears. I know that I was, I had to make some big, Hey, Vinny, can you hear me now, brother? Can you hear me now? So while we're trying to get Vinny back in, I love where he's talking about, right? So he's talking about mindset, he's talking about movement, and he's talking about mindfulness, right? And I know one thing that I'm trying to do is like the first 30 minutes of my day, I kind of like to call it owning your day. I forget where I'm from, but I love that concept of owning your day. So the first 30 minutes of my day, I want to set it up because once we open ourselves up to the world, right, we look at our emails, we take those phone calls, as soon as we look at that phone, right, the world now owns us. So the first 30 minutes of my day, right, setting intentions for the day, looking at positive gratitude, hydrating first thing. You back?
Yeah, so I missed you for about a minute.
All right, cool. So I was just kind of recapping what you said about how your whole morning routine was music to my ears. And, just so that people know, like, we didn't discuss this morning routine ahead of time. This just goodness came out of this. And I was just talking, Vinny, about how powerful that first 30 minutes of my day are for me. And I picked it up somewhere. And I love this whole concept of owning you. You talked about owning your day, right? Because as soon as we pick up this first thing in the morning, the world now owns us, right? We now are giving our energy to other people. So what I'm doing, it's not perfect, right? First 30 minutes of my day is I'm not looking at my email I'm not picking up my phone for the first 30 minutes. Writing intentions for the day. I'm hydrating, right? Trying to get some fresh air or light as quickly as I possibly can. And then once I've kind of done everything I can do to control my day, I'm in a much better state to be able to give to the world that wants a lot from us on a daily basis. So that first 30 minutes, bro, is so important. And the fact that you're doing that is music to my ears. We can look at, kind of sleep in general is, right? You've got this, sleep is an event, bro, right? There's what do we do before, what do we do during, and what do we do upon waking, right? We look at our work days as an event. We prep for that. We get up, we make our lunch, we go to work, we take care of people. We prep for that. But then there's 8 to 10 hours, a third of our day that we should prepare for. And you talked about what's your sleep environment. Blacking out the light, getting rid of noise, getting clutter out of the bedroom, clean sheets. And, we could talk about this all day long, but the fact that you're doing this yourself is music to my ears because I know you're passing on this wisdom and knowledge to all of your athletes.
Yeah. And, I try to keep it as simple as possible for them, and to figure out where we can fill gaps, right? Like,
love it.
And we talk about habit changes. We call it, what are 1 to 3 habit changes that you can make right now? I'm not going to ask you to do 5 things. I'm going to ask you to do 1 to 3.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is, I bet you see the same thing. How many individuals do come across that don't even drink close to enough water?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when you look at these little things, all these little things done over time and improving those things add up to really being big things, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's really just eating more of a whole food based diet. How can we incorporate more whole foods, right?
Yeah.
By adding, we start to subtract. And I think it's so extreme, right? Because it's either all or it's nothing.
Yep. Well, that's the thing, right? That's
another battle we fight, right? Because
the analysis by paralysis, right? I'm trying to do so many things, I do nothing.
Or because they're getting misguided, or there's all these other voices, right? Like we have a big things like, if you're going to come into our program, you have to 100% give us the chance. You have to trust. But you cannot. It's what do they say? There's no elevators to success. You have to take the stairs, right? And I tell these kids, there is nothing magical about this. There's nothing magic that I'm going to tell you here. No gadget I'm going to tell you. It's going to be in the consistency and the effort and the will and the want to get better. And how are you going to keep yourself motivated? Right? Who are you going to keep yourself around that helps support your goals and your dreams? You know,
That's interesting, Vin, right? That's interesting, right? You know, just the power of, you know, part of that recovery is how we live, right? The other 23 hours of the day. And the fact that you just mentioned about, you know, you can have the best athletes in the world, but they're doing everything correctly. They're training, but they surround themselves with negative people. How did that, like, how does that influence recovery and readiness? I think it's important.
I think it's probably one of the most essential and important things for all of us humans, right? Who is your network? Who is in your circle, right?
Yeah.
Is somebody energy giving or energy draining?
Yeah.
But I always say, like, you know, of course we have things that we're going to talk about. Negative things happen, right? It's life. We all go through some form of struggle, and
Yeah.
we're forever going to go through some struggle.
Yeah.
But my thing is how you leave a conversation, right? The majority of people you want to get on the phone with, certain times of the day, you got to control all that, right? Like, it could be an uncle that's always on the negative side of things, and you hear one thing from it, now it just completely brings your energy down, right? So I think it's so important to somehow set up boundaries, but you got to be able to manage that. And that's tough to do, right? Especially to do when you're a young, let alone adult. It's tough to do as a younger kid who's so influenced, still trying to find his or herself, trying to find who's real. Like, there's so much. And I think there's so much that sometimes even as a parent, we're not thinking about, right? Or parents aren't really thinking on that line of, look at all the variables and all the stress that these kids have, you know? And I don't think sometimes we got to have empathy for that. We have to understand, just like when we were younger, let's put ourselves back in those shoes. You couldn't tell us that our problems were not problems, right?
Well, that's the thing. Right? If it's real to them, it's real to them.
Correct. And I
right?
think if we're more speaking with them, not always speaking at them, we're listening to them, and we got to kind of see it from all angles, right? I think that if we could really have a voice in that department, it's going to make everything else better in the gym, but it's going to make their whole life better. So I think understanding those things in recovery of how often are they around negative friends, right? Are they trying to be pushed in a direction? Or are they getting all this stress and negative input in their brain that is hindering performance in the field or in the weight room, right?
Yeah, that's some powerful stuff. You know, and you mentioned there this whole concept of just actually listening, you know, and I think more often not, not by design but by default, Vinny, we often listen, and before someone's even finished telling you something, you're already formulating a response in your head, right? Are you truly listening? Seeking to understand, right? The reason we're given 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? Listen more, talk less, right? And that there's so much power in listening, but could just hear them out, because as you said, their struggles are real. It may not be a struggle for us. We may not know how to relate because we may not be going through the same thing, but the youth of today and the amount of pressure that society is putting upon them, then you add on what you're trying to do to build ability, to build resilience, to manage the demands of multiple sports or positions or activities, and then manage the demands of life, right? That's the stuff that's real for us as strength and conditioning coaches, right? That's what we need to manage beyond just the training session, right? And that whole power of being able to listen. And you know what? Part of humility is, I think, Vinny, is we don't have to have the answer for everything. We don't have to know the answer.
Yeah.
But listening is so powerful.
No, and in fact, I think what you just said, I'm guilty of it, right? We're all guilty.
We all are.
It's tough because you so want to help that when you're starting to hear him speak, but realizing that in my own world is that, you know what? You got to listen even better. Like, just listening. You want to have the answer because you want to help. But whether it's you just listening, a lot of times that's what they want. They want you to listen. And I think that if
my wife tells me that all the time. I'm not looking for you to solve my problems. I just want you to listen, because I think for we want to fix things all the time, right? We don't have the answers, we don't have all the answers. It's okay to say, you know what? I don't know. Or just, as you say, they just want to be heard.
Yeah. And I've noticed now more than ever, if you're just listening to them and then you just say to them, look, I understand, I can feel what you're going through. And it doesn't need to be something, go do this. It's just and saying, hey, I hope it gets better from here. Let's do everything we can to keep it going. Anything I can do to help. That's it. You know, and you're right, because we try to have the answers because we genuinely want to find some answer to whatever they're going through and overcome whatever they're going through. So listen, I think it's something we're forever evolving as human beings, right? And we're always checking ourselves to see where can we be better, right? And I think when going back to this recovery thing, I think it's deeper than a lot of people understand, right? Like it's a deeper thing on why we're seeing more than ever unrecovered athletes and people that aren't recovered, and why injury rates are high. And there's so much more to it, but a lot of it is either they're doing too little or they're doing way too much, right? Yeah, you'll never find a perfect balance, but it's better's better. We always say more's not better, better's better.
Absolutely.
Right? And I tell parents, if your kid can only give me 2 quality days, then I'd rather have them for 2 quality days than the rest of the days not be quality, but that it almost negatively impacting them more than it's actually helping them. Right. So I think we really have to, I put a lot of stress, and Dan, I'm sure you do as well, and any caring coach does. I put so much stress on, repeating things, because you want to see them do these things to be successful. But I've realized sometimes if you could just find them a win, or you can get them to do one thing and just be 1% better, and kind of back to reminding yourself, if you're better than you were, than you walked in, then you're better, right? And have them sometimes be okay with being okay, and that little improvements it's all on how you phrase it, right? It's
absolutely
frame it and word it, right? So I could say, oh, I'm not doing enough, I'm this, and negative self-talk, or I could say, you know what? These are 2 things I did do this week, and they made me better. And I'm taking my own advice on this, right? Being a father now of 2, and having a 3rd one on the way, and trying to always improve as a husband, and being the best father I can be, but yet be the best coach I can be. We take on a lot, right? Because
absolutely.
We want to be as positive as we can be. And that's also, it's in our DNA, it's in our nature, but it's what we do for a living. We can sympathize and we understand these things, right? But
I love it. As anticipated, like we're already at 40 minutes. Like we could sit here for 90 minutes. I am sensing a part 3 with the Vin Man and the Rooster. That's what I'm sensing here. But some big takeaways from me today, who for all of you that are watching, is the importance of doing less better, right? The importance of simplicity, and what you do consistently is generally what you're going to see success from, right? And I love the way you're approaching this. Instead of telling what your athletes, what they should be doing, you're involving them in the process. You're asking questions. Okay, what can you do? What do you have access? Getting them to respond, right? Getting buy-in, and then working with what they have, because we know there's lots of demands on these athletes, right? And I love your concept of movement, mindset, and what was the other one? I'm sorry, the 3 M's: mindset,
movement, and mindfulness.
Mindfulness. I love it. So something that both of us have find success from is gratitude. Once you put it out there, I think, especially now, Vinny, with what we're dealing with, it's a lot easier to be negative. It's a lot harder to be positive, right? It's easy to find the negatives, Vinny, right? But what are your silver linings every day? There's something there, right? There's something there for everyone, right? And I love the way you approach it yourself, and I love the approach holistically that you have with your athletes, regardless of whether they're your CEO who's managing the demands of a corporation, to all the way up to your pro athletes who are playing in the NFL. And I absolutely love what you're doing, Vinny. Love what you stand for.
Yeah, look, I Dan, and the feeling is so mutual, man. And I think I think this was such a great topic. And again, I think there's so many things that we discussed that we could take a deeper dive into. And it's all powerful stuff, right? Let's not look at all these things they need to be doing. Let's just look at a few things that they can do tomorrow.
Love it.
More likely to make a habit, the less is more approach, right?
I love it.
And if you're not reading, start reading. It was a while I was listening to podcasts. I was reading a lot of stuff based on our field.
Yeah.
I want to start reading other stuff that have nothing to do with being a coach, or the biomechanics of speed and movement. Yes. And I said, look, I'm going to pick a book, has nothing to do with that, but some sort of self-improvement book, or whatever it is, and I'm going to go 10 minutes a day. 10 minutes every day. And if I don't get it in the morning, no matter how tired I am, even if I'm not comprehending exactly what I'm reading, the fact is the discipline that I'm still doing it, right? Some mornings, my brain is, as you know, life, my brain is taking everything I'm reading. And then some, depending on the read, it's like, look, I'm going to keep disciplined on what I promised to myself.
I love it.
That continues to build more habits. You can set a new goal, and you're achieving that goal and actually doing it is a very powerful thing, right? And I just think if we can start doing that ourselves, right? We have to do it ourselves first before we're preaching it and throwing it at anyone else, because how are we thoroughly going to be able to talk about it if we're not living it and trying to live it, right?
Could not agree more, Vinny. Could not agree more. Love it. Love what we talked about. Love that you carved time out of your day once again to spend some time with me. And for those of you who have joined us, we appreciate you and your time because we know you have a choice, right? And we are happy that you've chosen to spend this 40 minutes with us. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for Vinny. I'm grateful for VertiMax and what they're doing for the performance world, but what they're doing for health and wellness that has no boundaries. I absolutely love it. So thank you for tuning in to VertiMax VIVE. This has been Dan McDonough with the one and only Vinny Scollo, and I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation in the very near future. Until then, my man, much love and health and happiness to you and your family. And stay well, be well, continue to be great. And I love your humbleness and your approach to everything you do. So I look forward to speaking to you again, my friend.
And likewise, means the world, Dan. And shout out to everybody that listened and tuned in today. Thank you, VertiMax. And Dan, we are definitely going to do this again. Would love to.
Round 3. All right. Have a great weekend, everyone. Hey, if you're out there, high fives, boom, virtual high fives. Hey, and if you're out there and you're wearing a mask and you come across somebody, smile. People can tell when you're smiling behind a mask, right?
Eyes, right?
Exactly. The eyes are the window to the soul. Have a great weekend, everyone, from my home to yours. Much love, health, and happiness, and we will see you soon. Take care.